Two tax rulings granted by Ireland have artificially reduced Apple's tax burden for over 2 decades in breach of EU state aid rules.
The US companies have been very efficient at doing business in Europe and not paying too much tax, and now the political climate demands that they pay tax going forward.
Well, let's bring in Ira Spitzer now, who has the latest for us from Brussels. Hi, Ira. Before we get into what happened in court, can you just tell us more about why the EU ordered Apple to pay some $14 billion back to Ireland?
Well, the European Union believes that Apple massively underreported its profits for over a decade to 2014 regarding the profits in Europe, Africa, the Middle East, and elsewhere, and that they essentially underreported these profits using Irish tax laws. So they're saying that both Apple, the large company, and the government of Ireland are both responsible for this situation in which Apple, in their view, now is supposed to pay the Irish government this sum of around $14 billion. So that is the European Commission's case against Apple and that ruling that they made back in 2016.
Yes, and Apple has already started to repay some of that money that the EU says it owes, but the company is obviously hoping for that whole tax bill to be completely scrapped. Tell us more about what the tech giant is arguing in court.
Well, Apple, in the first day of this court hearing, this appeal, arguing very strenuously that this is a complete misinterpretation of tax law on the part of the European Commission, something of an overreach, and also basically saying that that there was no responsibility for them to pay these taxes because Irish tax law allowed, in their view, for these profits to be temporarily stored there tax-free. So that is, or not tax-free, but with a very low tax rate for the most part, something far different from what the European Commission sees. So essentially, Apple saying in court that that the laws that they were subject to at the time cannot be retroactively changed, in their view, to suddenly produce this large tax bill.
Now, Ireland is also fighting the European Commission's ruling. Why would Dublin want to fight an order that effectively calls on Apple to hand $14 billion over to its coffers?
Well, Ireland has had great success in offering multinational corporations the ability to do business in this way, in the way that Apple and other companies use the island to store profits or to pay a lower corporate tax rate. So while sure, the Irish coffers would take this significant windfall, perhaps, from this arrangement with Apple that the Commission wants, in the end, this would really upend their sort of whole strategy and approach as a country to try and encourage companies like Apple to do business there. So Ireland also very upset about the Commission's ruling, and they are also facing legal action about this.
Now, as we know, the EU regulators and tech companies alike are closely watching the outcome of this case. When exactly will we know a ruling from this EU court?
Well, the appeal is expected to just last for 2 days, but we don't expect to hear a ruling before the end of this year. So that will, of course, take us into the year 2020. Now, after that, it's expected that the losing side would then have the chance to then appeal this to the European Court of Justice, the highest court in Europe. So it could still be a couple of years before we have some real certainty as to what the future holds. But as you mentioned, lots of multinational companies paying very close attention to how the court interprets this, because this could have very serious implications for their profits looking forward.
Okay, Ira Spitzer, we'll have to leave it there, but thank you for your time from Brussels.